loves. Today we are going to be making the Baby Possum. Again, this one's very quick to make, so it's perfect for markets and for kids. It's super cute, and raccoons are one of my favorites, so I really like this one. So let's get into what you're going to need for this project. So first of all, I'm using burlap blanket yarn, and we're going to be using the white, the gray, and the black, and you can really use whatever white, gray, and black that you want. You could even switch up the yarn if you'd like to something different. Then I'm using a size K hook or a 6.5 millimeter. I've got my scissors, and then of course we've got our polyfill, and then we've got some 12 millimeter eyes. And then you will also need a nose. You can really use, see, I've used two different sizes here, so you can use whatever size you like, but it's just up to you which one you think fits your raccoon's face. So let's go ahead and get started. So to start our baby raccoon, we are going to start with the nose with the white. So I'm going to get my white out. And personally, I never use a magic circle because I think that with chenille it tends to break the yarn when you try and pull it. So I always do a chain 2 method and just make sure that it is sufficiently tight so it doesn't create a hole later on. And within our magic circle or the chain 2, we are going to put 5 single crochet. Alright, so before I finish my 5th single crochet into my magic circle, I'm actually going to go ahead and change my color to the gray. So I'll just take this out, and before I finish that 5th single crochet, I'm going to go ahead and change my color. Okay. So now that we've got our row 1 down with the 5 single crochet in the magic circle, we are just going to single crochet around for a total of 5 single crochet. Okay, so you can already see the nose starting to take shape there. So now for row 3, we are going to do increase in every stitch around for a total of 10. Okay, so now we've got 10 stitches on here. Or for our next row, we are going to do a single crochet and an increase in gray. And before we finish the increase there, we are going to change our color to black. So let's go ahead and get that out. Okay, so I've just finished the single crochet and I have almost finished my increase here. Before I do that, I'm going to change it to black. All right, so now with the black, I'm going to do single crochet, increase, and then 2 single crochet. Okay, So now before I finish this single crochet, I want to change again to gray. So I've still got my gray attached, and so I'm just going to go back here and kind of make sure everything's straight with my strands of thread, and I'm going to, just keeping that attached, go ahead and finish out that black single crochet with the gray. So everything's still attached, and I've just finished out my last black single crochet to change my color to gray. All right, so now that we have changed to gray, we need to do a single crochet in the same stitch as this one to create an increase stitch. So with the gray, we're going to go back into the same stitch as before and do another single crochet in the same stitch. So now you've got one black and one gray in the same stitch. And then I'm going to do one more gray single crochet, and again, before I change to the next stitch, I'm going to switch to my black. Again, it's still attached, so I'm just taking my thread here, and I'm going to finish out that single crochet to change to black. With the black, we are going to do an increase stitch, single crochet, and an increase. And that will be the end of row 4. Okay, so you'll notice that before we go on to our next stitch, we're changing back to gray again for row 5. So before I finish out the last stitch of row 4, I'm actually going to change my color again. I'm just putting the black to the side and grabbing my gray down here to finish out my stitch. All right, so that is the last stitch of round 4 finished out. So now going on to round 5, we're going to do with the gray 2 single crochet, an increase, and then 2 more single crochet. Okay, now you'll notice that we are changing our color again. So before I finish out that last gray stitch, you see we're changing to white. I still have my white attached here, so I'm going to just use that to finish out my last single crochet in the gray there. Okay, now with the white, we're doing an increase, and 3 single crochet. And again, you'll notice before we finish out the white, we are changing to gray. So we are going to finish out that white using our gray that's still attached. All right, now with the gray, we are going to single crochet in the same stitch to make an increase. So now you'll have one white and one gray in the same stitch. Now we're going to do a single crochet in the gray. We're changing our color again. So I'm going to take my white to finish out that last gray stitch. Now with our white, we are going to do single crochet, increase, two single crochet, and you'll see we're changing again to the gray. So I'm going to finish out my last white stitch with the gray, and then as our last stitch we are going to do increase in gray. All right, So now that is the end of the color changes for the face. So we can actually go ahead and cut our threads for this black and white because we won't need them again until the tail. So I'm actually going to go ahead and cut these two threads here. So that we won't get tangled up unnecessarily. And I like to go ahead and tie these off so that they don't come unraveled or have anything weird happen to them. So let's go ahead and tie those. And then I just kind of tuck those ends down in there, kind of as a little stuffing for the face. Okay, so now let's go back to our raccoon. We are on row 6. And for row 6, we are just going to single crochet around for a total of 20 stitches. All right, now for row 6, we are going to do single crochet 9 and an increase twice. So that was 9 single crochet and my increase. Now I'm going to do 9 and an increase again. All right. So that's row 6. We now have a total of 22 stitches. For row 7, we are going to single crochet around for also a total of 22 stitches. All right. Now for row 8, we are going to do single crochet 10 and an increase twice for a total of 24 stitches. So now we have the total of 24 stitches on here. We just finished up row 8, and this would be a good time if you like to insert your safety eyes with the backing. And personally, I like to insert them at the very end and glue them on because I think they stay on better that way. But if you like to insert them with the backing, you would need to go ahead and do that. So the placement for the eyes is really up to you, but I kind of like it to be the upper middle part of the black part of the eyes is where we are putting them onto. So just kind of play around with it and see what looks good for your or not your possum, your raccoon. So I would put these right there and right there. But again, you know, with your tension, it may look different. So it's just up to you where you want to place those. But that is where I would place the eyes for this raccoon. And again, I like to hot glue these or super glue these at the end because I just think they stay on better that way. I've had some trouble with them coming out when people would purchase them and then like play with it. And then the eyes would end up coming out because all that's holding it in is the little backing. And so I personally find that with glue, they just stay on a lot better. So it's up to you. All right, moving on with our pattern, we are now on row 9, and for row 9 and for row 10, we are just going to single crochet around each single crochet. Okay, so now that we have finished row 10, we are going to go on to row 11, and for this row we are going to single crochet decrease around for a total of 16 stitches. And I like to use the invisible decrease for these. So to do an invisible decrease, you are just going to pick up the front loop of the next 2 stitches and pull through 1 loop and then yarn over and pull through. So that's your invisible decrease. And we're going to do the single crochet decrease all the way around. Okay, now we are going to go ahead and stuff our baby raccoon. So I'm just taking some polyfill, and I like them pretty firm, but you are not trying to stretch out your stitches. So just fill it until it feels appropriate. Can always add more later. Alright, so now I've got it mostly stuffed. So we're ready to move on to row 12, and for this row we are just decreasing around for a total of 8 stitches. So now that I have finished my decrease around, I actually want to wait to finish that final decrease because we are going to change our color again. So we can actually go ahead now and trim our gray off because we are done with that. And again, I have not finished my final decrease there from row 12. So we're ready to go on to the tail now. So we're going to transition to black and then do a couple of rows to finish out the tail here. So I'm going to take my black and finish that final decrease in row 12 with the black. And now for row 13, we are just going to single crochet around one row of black. All right, and so here I would like to go ahead and tie these tails together and put them down inside the body. All right, and again we are changing our color, so I'm actually not going to finish that last stitch in row 13 with the black because we're going to change our color again to white. So I'm taking my white, finishing out the last stitch from row 13. And so now with the white, we are going to do 2 rows of just single crochet around. All right, and again, not finishing out my last single crochet because we're going to be changing our color again. All right, so to finish out the last stitch in row 15, we are going to change our color to black. And then for row 16, we are going to do an increase and then 7 single crochet. So let's do our increase and then 7. Okay, and again, we're not finishing that last single crochet. We're going to change back to white for row 17. So for our last stitch in row 16, I'm actually going to switch to white. And we are doing 2 rows of single crochet around with the white. Again, we're not finishing out the last stitch of row 18. We're about to switch for, okay, so we're not finishing out our last stitch of row 19 because we are actually about to switch for row 20 to black. So again, we're just going to take our black and finish out that single crochet. And then for row 20, we are going to do single crochet and a decrease 3 times. And I don't stuff the tail. Okay, now's a good time for me to go ahead and cut my white yarn. I'm going to put that inside. And now for our last row, we are going to do a single crochet decrease 2 times around. And then I'm just going to slip stitch to end my row. Cut that yarn off. Go ahead and pull that through. All right, and so now I'm just going to close up my end here. It's only 4 stitches, but I'm going to pull through the front loop of each one just to close off this hole here. Okay, and then I like to just slip stitch back to that first one to keep it secure. Okay, so now I'm just going to pull this thread to the inside. Tuck that away. All right. So now we have our body completed and we are ready to add the ears. For the ears, we are going to place them on row 6, which is the row behind the white on their face right here. So you can see that they are attached kind of into that first gray row behind the white of the eye. So each ear is going to take up 5 stitches of space. So for the first ear, I like to imagine 1 space in the middle of the ears, and I like to go into this row right behind the white, kind of where the first stitch is of white right here. And that is the stitch that I'm going to use to insert the first stitch for the ear. So once I've got my placement for it ready, I'm going to pull up a thread of gray through that and do a slip stitch to secure it. Okay, so now that I've got my slip stitch securing it, we are going to do in the next stitch a half double crochet. So let me do that into the next stitch behind the white of the eye. And then we are going to do 2 treble stitches in the same stitch. So there's 1. Let's do our second one. All right. And then we are going to do half double crochet in the next stitch. And then lastly, a slip stitch to finish it off. Okay, so that's our first ear. Pull that through. We'll come back and get those ends here in a minute. Okay, so for the second ear, I like to count over where I'm going to start from over here. And you can count because it's 5 stitches, so I like to leave 1 stitch of space here. So this is where I would start for my other ear on the other side. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is where I like to start my ear for the other side. It's at the last stitch of the end of the white over on this side. And so I'll just go into that stitch behind it. And we are getting our gray out again. And once you have your placement, you are just going to pull up a stitch right there. And we're going to slip stitch to secure it. And then same as the other side, we are going to do a half double. And then 2 treble in the same place. And then half double. And then a slip stitch to secure. And that is our second ear. I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. Pull it through. And to secure these ends, I like to kind of pull them to the middle where they can meet, and I can tie them off together so that nothing comes loose later on. So I'll just pull those out. Tie them off. I may cut the length a bit. And then just pull these strands to the inside. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, and that's how we add the ears. All right, and that's it for the baby possum. This is so cute and so easy to make. It's only challenging because of the color changing in the face, but I feel like that's not really that difficult if you get a little practice with it. So let me know how it goes, and if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message or leave a comment down below.